Well, hello and welcome back to GBNAmerica with me, Patrick Christys. Well, it always feels a little bit like the world is on a knife edge, but I think especially so now with everything that's going on in the Middle East. And it's been a heck of a week for it. In fact, just before I started this interview, I was checking Twitter and I could see that Israelis have been told to expect an imminent Iranian attack on air bases in Israel, etc. So huge amount to go out there. And here to do it with me is Lieutenant Daniel Davies, who is a foreign policy and defence expert, senior fellow as well at Defence Priorities, advocating a strong national defence and a restrained foreign policy. Thank you very much for joining us here at GBNAmerica. How are you?
I'm doing really well. Thanks for inviting me.
Good. So, this does look a little bit concerning, to say the very least, doesn't it? Israel managed to knock out a load of Hezbollah fighters, as well as a huge amount of their top brass. But we can expect some kind of retaliation. I mean, I know what's going on at the moment is that they seem to be pulling on the heartstrings a little bit, the Lebanese authorities, saying that there's about 1 million people who've been displaced as a result of Israel's actions, etc. How do you see this panning out?
Well, listen, I mean, you got to look at the fact that this began. Israel has now admitted that this is something that's been in the planning for months. So you can now look back to the situation, what happened with the pagers exploding, the walkie-talkies, the assassination of all the senior leaders. All that was preparation phases, and then several days of multiple hundreds of airstrikes per day at targets throughout the area, designed to weaken the ability of Hezbollah so that when they went in on the ground, they faced a less capable enemy. So the real question, though, is what is their objective here? Because they have variously said it's to, quote, push back Hezbollah, but they haven't really defined where push back to where and to how far. I mean, you're talking like 120 some odd kilometer across that front there, and to try and push that many people back in Hezbollah over about a 25-kilometer route is an enormous military task. And I don't think that Israel has the capacity to do that in anything less than 5, 6, 7 months. And that's assuming that Hezbollah doesn't use their missiles or that Iran doesn't join in. So this is an extremely difficult military task which they've undertaken.
How close are we to Iran actively really joining in now?
Well, no one can say for sure, except for, as you pointed out, I mean, literally before we came on air here, there's all kinds of like alarming reports going on throughout both Israel and Washington that they say intelligence shows it's imminent that Israel or Iran is going to strike Israel potentially within hours, is what the report I saw just before coming here showed. And so we have to take that risk potentially seriously. And the United States has just sent an additional aircraft carrier strike group with at least 3 squadrons of air power to the region, almost as though we're planning to actually engage with that. And the Secretary of Defense, Austin, has basically given Iran a warning that we're prepared to do that. So this is, I think, on a knife's edge to a regional war, which we should not fight.
Okay, well, that was my next question. So why should we not fight that? Because there's obviously a strong case for both sides of this, but some people would say that Israel is the only democracy really in that region there. They are our closest ally, certainly in that region, and we can't leave them to stand alone.
Well, listen, Israel has fought their own war in 1967, 1973. They fought the Second Lebanese War in 2006. We didn't fight with them at any of those times. We have been giving them, especially for more than a decade, $3.8 billion per year in security assistance so that they could stand on their own. So if they stood on their own during all these times in the past, why should we expect that they can't stand on their own here? There's a bigger risk, though, I would argue. By sending in all this American firepower and all these declarations of support, we give encouragement for Netanyahu to go further. If he had to rely on his own forces, he would have to use some combination of coercion and diplomacy by not overreaching. But if you think you have the U.S. armed forces over your shoulder, you're going to be a lot more risk-taking because you think somebody else can come fight for you. And that is a bad situation because I guarantee you, whatever anybody thinks, this war against Iran would be far, far worse than anything that we did in 2003 against Iraq. It's a much bigger place, and you have the potential for Russia to be involved in one way or another because they have now a military relationship with Iran. And I doubt very seriously that they're going to allow them to go down against an Israeli and U.S. war. So that could also expand. Every way you want to look at this, it is bad to go to war.
Yeah, I mean, just on the neighbouring countries immediately to Israel, there they are stacked full of terrorists, right? And I mean, Iran are bad guys. Yeah, would we not want to try to get rid of those people?
Well, see, that implies that you can choose to get rid of them, and you can't. All you can do is just stir the thing up and give people more reason to want to go against you, as Israel has been doing with their war in Gaza, the way they've been killing so many tens of thousands of civilians as well, is that it's generating more and more hatred for them. They're no closer to, quote, destroying Hamas than they were almost a year ago when they started that operation. And now that you're talking the same thing by assassinating all these leaders in Hezbollah, the seductive thing is this will make them back down. This will make them see they can't win. The exact opposite is almost certain to happen. That it will give generations of more people more reason to go against Israel and the United States if we help. So you're not.
So what if Iran make the first move, though? What if Iran make the first serious move? Well, then surely we've got to choose.
They haven't made the first serious move. Israel has already. Israel destroyed their embassy compound in Damascus last April. They've assassinated people in the capital city during an inauguration. They have already taken big first stops here, and now then they're going on the ground against their biggest ally in the region, in Hezbollah. Now, if Iran retaliates, I mean, they've got stuff they could already retaliate, stuff that we would have. I assure you that Britain and the United States, if our embassy was destroyed, if someone was assassinated in our capital city during an inauguration, we would take all kinds of action. So, to be honest, we can't say that Iran would be taking the first step when Israel already has.
What could Iran do? Because there was that drone attack that amounted to actually nothing. In fact, some could argue it was quite humiliating for Iran, actually, because Israel managed to punch all those things out the sky. They've got this wonderful Iron Dome. Israel clearly has a huge amount of resources, a huge amount of intelligence as well, and maybe more infrastructure around that than, dare I say it, the Iranians do. So what damage could Iran seriously do to Israel?
Well, let me tell you, that's the popular narrative of what happened last April, but that's not what happened. Look, the Iranians signaled well ahead of time that they were going to make this attack. They announced it, and then they used the lead with their drones, which took hours of flight of time, knowing that Israel would be able to shoot them down, that we would go in. Because Iran wanted to avoid a war. They don't want a war because they know that they would suffer a lot from it. So they had that one reaction that they knew would get shot down using their older missiles and slower drones. But if they had attacked in a different part of Israel or used a different kind of weapon systems or method of attack, they could have penetrated that Iron Dome. It is definitely not this impenetrable deal if it's attacked properly. And Iran has that capacity here. So they can deal a serious blow to Israel. But look, neither country can invade the other, Iran to Israel or Israel in the other place, because you have so much space in between. They can't do it. So there's no knockout blow that either could do. And if you get into this long-range strike, I mean, you're literally having lots of people and innocent people in cities on both sides getting destroyed. But there's no quick end to this. All you're going to get is probably this thing dragging on possibly for years.
I mean, if Iran had not been sponsoring numerous different terror groups, whether that's Hamas or Hezbollah, and using them as proxies, then maybe Israel wouldn't have felt the need to go and behave in the way that it's behaved now.
Well, you can certainly make that argument, and definitely do, from the Israeli side. But the problem is you have to look at this from both sides. And from the other side of the view, of course, they don't view themselves as terrorists. They view themselves as resistance against the Israeli aggression, especially against the Palestinian people, which, of course, goes back decades, long before October 7th. And so even if we disagree with them, and most in the West do, from their perspective, they're responding to what Israel has been doing to their people for a long time and preventing them from having peace, a two-state solution, etc. And so you have both sides being unwilling to consider the side of the other, and you have perpetual conflict.
So look, you've spoken there, quite clearly about what you hope doesn't happen, i.e., you hope we don't end up getting embroiled in something that could turn into, a really horrendous and drawn-out conflict that could drag in other nations, etc. What do you actually think will happen?
I think that we'll be stupid, and I think we'll get sucked into a war. I truly hope that I'm proven wrong, but given the trajectory of things, given the emphatic statements of Netanyahu in the last week or so, especially the support that American officials have said they'll give them, the fact that we're sending air power into the region, it just really looks like this is getting set up to be an expensive war. I hope I'm wrong, but I fear that that's where we're heading.
Is there political appetite for it? I hate to reduce human life and war and everything to politics, but unfortunately that is a lot of what it can be. Is there a political appetite for war? Do you think that, well, what's now the Biden administration, potentially next the Harris administration, or indeed the Trump administration, do you think they see themselves going up in the polls as a result of having a war like the kind that you've just described?
Yeah, this is one of the few areas of this current election that there is no space between any of the, whether it's Biden, Harris, or Trump. They're almost, trying to beat themselves up to say who would be the most supportive of Israel. And the American media is hugely behind anything that Israel does here. And that's one of the great sorrows that I have, because I've fought some of these kinds of wars before, and I know what this one could be like, and few people in America have any concept of what this could mean. They think it's going to be like in Syria, where we sent a bunch of missiles out and then Bashar al-Assad backed down, or in Libya when we fired a bunch of airplanes and other strikes and Gaddafi was killed and that went away. This is almost certainly not going to be like that. And this time, the enemy has the ability to strike back against American targets in the Middle East, and definitely against Israeli targets that can kill a lot of people.
Gosh, okay. And as you said there, the threat of Russia or China being brought into all of this as well. And then that starts to get into incredibly dangerous territory. Well, look, can I just say a massive thank you? And it's great to have you on the show today and have your insights there. And I do hope to chat to you again very, very soon. But hopefully we're talking about the fact that it all calmed down and went away. I'm not sure we will be there. But that is Lieutenant Daniel Davis there imparting his wisdom onto us. Thank you very much for your time on GBN America.